the theme for today was all about young activists and the role that we can take in the climate revolution. I know I look quite old with this beard, but I'm actually only 24. Maybe I don't know if it's young or old in this group, but I think we've got quite a mix here. But I was thinking of different ways to try and break it down and share my perspective. And these 3 points, the power of networks, communicating sustainable development goals, and the role of youth in local politics, specifically on volunteering, was kind of how I wanted to frame it. And out of that, discussing a bit about what I do at work, what I do with my side hustle, the podcast that Lydia mentioned, and what I do in my free time, and hopefully maybe some ideas for you or opportunities that maybe you could take forward from this. And I'm sure there might be questions at the end, so that'll be interesting. But the first point I wanted to share was about the power of networks. And really that's because I really found myself in a place last November. I was lucky enough to go to an innovation camp in China, in Shenzhen. And it was all about the Sustainable Development Goals. It was all about co-creating solutions to specific challenges. So I was in the water group. This is an organization called Unleash, which organized this, and they run it every year. So I couldn't recommend more for you to all check that out afterwards. But I was there for 5 days in a group, co-creating from dusk till dawn around issues, specifically in the excessive use of water, excessive water consumption in Pakistan in agriculture, where 90% of the water is used in agriculture, which is crazy. I had a Pakistani guy on my team. And we were lucky enough to make it to the finals. And there was me pitching barefoot like a agriculturalist. I was trying to fit in and look like a farmer, but we didn't win, so that didn't work too well. But the point of sharing this was more that the things that have come out of that one experience and developing that network, and a lot of the people you see there on the screen, we have a WhatsApp group, we still speak, and that has changed my life and unleashed me. It's the name of the organization that set it up in immeasurable ways. And it's crazy to think that one moment in time can affect how everything you do thereafter in such a profound way. But really, I've seen that the power of having this network and like-minded individuals, and like you mentioned, Jordan, we're not in a vacuum, but bouncing off other people really does a lot for me. And it's also what we do in my day job at work. So I work for a cluster network. There's a little nice diagram there. So a cluster is basically bringing together these different actors from the private sector, the public sector, academia, and trying to create value and create opportunities in the space between. We've got some professors, PhD students here. You're doing your research, you're doing your work. There are companies that are doing cutting edge research. There are cities that are procuring solutions. How do we get these things aligned and closer together? And that's really the role of a cluster. So I can give you a nice example from an organization in Green Cape, and they have a program called the Western Cape Industrial Symbiosis Program. Sorry, I said in Green Cape. Their name is Green Cape. They're in the Western Cape in South Africa. And what they have done down there is really, they've gone out into all of the industry, which is, I think there's a lot of steel, there's a lot of metalwork, there's a lot of cement manufacturing, there's quite a few different industries. And they have taken a full accounting and done a full mapping and understanding of each of those businesses, each of their waste streams. So when you have a foundry, you have sand left over with metalworks, and that sand is just thrown in a dump, which they pay for. You have other businesses that might need sand. You have spare boardrooms. You have all these different spaces. And after spending 6 months to a year mapping, they then realized, okay, we can match all of these different actors and persons together, and we can reallocate resources so that collectively we can do more together. I thought that was a really nice example of sort of the power of a cluster and the power of networks, and how breaking down the silos can do so much more. You can only go so far alone. That was kind of my first point about networks, and in terms of clusters, there's every country in the world. There's a Clean Tech Bulgaria in Sofia. There's one in Austria. There's Canada, Argentina, everywhere. So also for people that are interested in the field, you can check out what your local cluster is up to. It's definitely an interesting space to start a career or to get involved in for work. And that's not me promoting anything I do, but just for the audience here, if anyone would be interested in something like that. The second kind of point that I wanted to go into was, again, from that Unleash experience, the podcast I started, which is SDG Talks, and my co-host is in Chicago. He's a he's a superhero. He's super energetic, and he drives the whole process. And if I didn't have him and the network that we developed there, I wouldn't have been able to do it. But since January, we met in November. We've done 40 podcasts, 2 roundtables. I was lucky enough to have Lydia on to discuss sustainable fashion. We're now looking to do live events. Let's see about COVID. We're now looking to bring those on that come on to discuss the Sustainable Development Goal issue, be it a charity here in Scotland trying to conserve whales and dolphins. We have 23 species of whales and dolphins in Scotland. You might not know that. I didn't know that before. Last week I had a guy on that was talking about insurance and how insurance is going to be one of the key enablers for raising the developing world's status, socio-economic status, because there's so much risk with lending and with capital and finance that there's a premium when you lend in these types of regions, and it impacts them quite negatively. So we're looking to see how some of these people that we get on, these charities and non-profits, we can enable with fundraising. How can we be a platform to help them market their issues, help enable them to reach new financing avenues? And again, if anyone here is doing any work related to the Sustainable Development Goals in the broadest sense, it would be great to have you on the podcast to discuss, or even a roundtable. And I hope Lydia can attest to the process being quite fun and enjoyable. And that's recorded if anyone ever wanted to see what she was involved in. And then the third point is, a bit different. But something I've been thinking a lot about recently, especially. When I look at politics, which to me is probably the key for everything that we want with the climate revolution, the green transition, and so much more outside of that sphere, but it's very much it's a heavily older generation dominated game. And I have this image here of Donald Trump and some fact checking that's been going on because he made 20,000 false claims. So my second point to that was character. And that really, I see politics and making politics sexy and having people with individual character, true character and true charity, not just us posting on social media, which I think is very important too, and a key enabler of the power of networks, but getting involved in local initiatives and getting out there and doing something locally and watching that ripple effect, and then maybe one day building up to the top. And I think we're seeing that in a lot of different countries. I found this image here. It's quite cool that it's a bunch of women, but it's Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand. There's a Finnish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen in Denmark, and they're all very young. And it's a new wave that we're seeing coming through in politics. And I have these 3 points, and so I've kind of lost track of my point for having decarbonisation, schools, and social care. But just these should be. These 3 points are what local government control, because local government can procure energy. I mean, of course, there's broadly national policies, but by getting involved in local initiatives and potentially tapping into local municipalities or government, you can have a big impact as well. And that can be done in your free time. So my third kind of point is that people should strive to lead a life of service. In summary, power of networks, maybe side hustles, do things on the side, take true responsibility for your actions in your life. I hope that was succinct enough for all of you and that you got something out of it. But that was everything that I wanted to say. So thank you very much for listening.